So Martin,
Hi there.
welcome to Malmo and welcome to Voosestore.
It's glad to be here.
Thank you so much. Today we're here to talk about something very special, and
Yes.
this is something that I've been looking into very carefully. It's the Panasonic S5.
Yeah, it's the new Lumix S5.
Yeah.
And this is basically the biggest inspiration I've got since the time of the GH2.
Mm-hmm.
I've been around for a while. I started with Lumix for 10 years ago with the GH2, and for some reason I just felt this kind of inspiration that I got at the time with the GH2, because that was like joining everything that I had in my photo bag with a much smaller system.
Mm-hmm.
And this is just the same feeling I get with this camera.
Mm-hmm. Was this camera, no, of course you work for Panasonic.
Yeah.
Before you knew, was this something that you were thinking that Panasonic would do? Thinking that you already have the S1, the S1R and the S1H?
Yeah, I was definitely hoping for it. And of course, sometimes we know a little bit in advance, but I was really hoping for this to come because I think we have this technology and we are good at shrinking sizes of things and making it small but powerful.
Yeah.
So I thought it was very much in line with what we actually usually create. So I could see it coming.
Yeah. Yeah. Personally, I'm very happy because all of you know that I'm a big fan of Panasonic, and especially the GH series, with the GH4 and the GH5. I wasn't on the GH2 wagon as you were, but I truly love those cameras.
Yeah, I still have it.
You still do?
I took it out from the closet the other day and just to kind of compare it.
Okay.
And it was kind of that same feeling in a way, but it was of course smaller.
Okay, cool. So what would you say are the main features of the S5?
Well, the main features of the S5 is the fact that it's just as much a great stills camera as a video camera. And when it comes to video, we didn't really take out much. It's basically the things that we have in the S1H and the S1 and the GH5. So you could say that in terms of video performance, it's like a full frame GH5. Mm-hmm. But the things that some users might lack with the GH5 was the ability to use it as a full frame, really good stills camera.
Yeah.
And I think that's, in this small package, that's a huge success with this camera, because it's actually a little bit smaller than GH5 and the G9.
Yeah, we think we have a GH5 on.
Yeah, it's kind of a little bit. The GH5 was quite rounded and really nice in your hand, but
looked like me basically.
Yeah.
Rounded.
Sorry. So this camera is really. We have trimmed it down so it kind of feels even smaller than it looks on the specs. Mm. So the person that's been holding it now, when we have demoed it, they usually say that, well, this is a camera you need to hold in your hand because it's hard to see on the internet how small it is. Yeah. So it's exciting.
As you say, I mean, one of the reasons why I love having a hybrid camera, because I shoot a lot with other cameras as well. Yeah. Having a hybrid camera and being able to shoot really great photos is such a great feature. Yeah,
definitely. And that's what we've been waiting for a long time, to have a compact camera that can do this. Mm. I mean, the S1 and the S1H, essentially, they are the cameras that can really do that. Mm. But there's really not much that we have trimmed down from the stills side of things with the S1H and the S1. Mm-hmm. Rather, I would say that there are new features here that actually surpass these two cameras. Mm-hmm. So, and I'm really glad to see that. We have like improved autofocus, especially in stills, which is really fantastic for portraits and everything. So it looks good.
Yeah. Now I know that one thing that Panasonic, together with Olympus, has been very good at recent years has been the IBIS. And I asked you before, but we can maybe take it now. I know that a lot of people think it's the exact same system of IBIS that we see in the S1H and S1R and S1. Can you talk to me a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's a little bit different. It's still the same 5-axis kind of stabilizer that we have in the GH5 and the S1H and S1 cameras. But because of the size, we needed to trim down on the size of the unit.
Yeah.
So it's essentially just, I would think that the basic difference is that it cannot really operate in such a wide angle. But when I've been using it, I don't see much difference at all, because I think that's much down to the tuning of the unit. If you tune it for video, for instance, you can get it like really smooth and steady like that. So I think the biggest difference is really in stills.
Okay.
If you want to go like crazy or bananas, like 5-6 seconds, I think that's where it differs most.
Okay.
But at the same time, I've been using it with the 2060, the kit lens, which is not stabilized in the lens and only uses the IBIS. And I think it works great for my hands, at least up to like 1 or 2 seconds.
Okay.
So there's really not a big difference. And I used to say that it's like a GH5, but a little bit better.
Yeah.
And that's really good enough.
That's very good,
right?
Yeah. One thing that I think is very funny when it comes to these compact cameras with their IBIS is that people often want to walk with them.
Yeah.
And for me personally, I want the IBIS to work when I'm shooting handheld and not running.
Right.
So I think there's probably a use of different usage situations. Because when I shoot, that's the time, of course I want it always to be stable, but that's probably for me at least the time that I want the IBIS to really work.
Right, yeah, and I have figured out for myself, since I do quite a lot of video work myself, that the IBIS has like a turning point, at least for me, when if I want to do a forest shot, for instance, if I want to walk in the forest and just make it look like I just fly through the forest, that's when you need a gimbal.
Yeah, exactly.
And the camera is not going to cut it.
Yeah.
Even with dual IS or the S1H even, it's not going to cut it. Because you need a steady center point to do that. But as soon as you have a person in the picture, then it's enough. If you follow, if you even like run after someone, it's going to work. Yeah. But then you have a steady point of focus to focus your eye on. Yeah, exactly. So that's a big difference.
Another thing that I'm really excited about, and we talked about this earlier also, is actually the screen on that we have here.
Yes.
And it's the same type of screen that's on the GH5. I believe it's a little bit smaller maybe.
It's a little bit
But it has one feature
smaller.
that is very important.
Yeah, and that is the screen brightness of this thing. And it's hugely bright. Yeah. So I even went to compare it with my Ninja 5, the IBIS recorder, which has a 1000 nits HDR screen, and you can turn that up. So I turned it all the way up in the white screen, and I measured the difference, and it was like, I didn't have a calibrated meter, but it was like probably 800 nits or so.
Okay, so
it's just slightly less bright than the Ninja. So what that means is that if you turn this up to brightness level 3...
KC wasn't at the highest.
No, it's really bright. I don't know if you can see that here in the camera, but it's fantastic brightness. Yeah. So it means if you compare it to other screens outdoors in full sunlight, you are not going to see much of the other screens at all, but here you can see a bright, nice image.
Yeah, of course, because it doesn't matter how good your screen is if you actually can't see what's supposed to be there.
Yeah, and also at the same time when we did this change with the brightness, this screen also has a wider color gamut, so it has a bigger color spectrum, so to speak. So it looks nicer, everything on there. Yeah.
One of the things that, when I saw the specs and everything, one of the things that I was at first a little bit disappointed about was that it could only do 10-bit 420 in 30 minutes at the time.
Yes.
But actually thinking of it, the only times, me personally, when I'm shooting like longer interviews that are more than like a couple of minutes at the time, then I'm always on a pair of sticks. On a tripod, and then I always have my Atomos Ninja. So with the Ninja I can shoot 4:2.
Yeah, then you can go on. Yeah. That's right.
And very soon with the firmware. So that was one of the things that I was, damn, they took away that.
But and also I think if you think about it a bit more also what the time limit actually is here, it's in a way to make sure that no user thinks that they can go on for hours and hours when there could be, some circumstances that would make it too hot. So it is depending on the heat, of course, but it's not really a heat problem. I mean, we can do 30 minutes and we can just stop it and start again. And it's not going to overheat just because of that. But also it makes it clear to you as a user that there is some kind of limit here, because it doesn't have a fan. But if you want to go long recordings, sometimes with this camera, of course, you can do that as well. So you can do that in also 4K up to 8 bits and not 10 bits. And if we look at the market right now, that's a really competitive spec as well, because a lot of cameras can only do 4K 8 bits in 30 minutes or 29:59. So
that's true. But for me, once you go 10 bit, it's very hard to go back.
It is, So what you can do here is you can actually go in 4K 10 bits, in HD 10 bits. That's going to work unlimited recording time. So there's an option.
So one thing that we haven't talked about, and I'm not sure about this because I haven't seen any reviewers talking about this, autofocus in the varied frame rates. Right,
we have a new set of variable frame rates here that's called slow and quick. So what it means is it's essentially the same as variable frame rate that we have in the S1 and S1H and KH5. A lot of users have been missing the autofocus in that mode. So in this new S&Q mode, you have autofocus up to, I think it's up to 150 frames per second in HD. I lost it here. If it's 120 or 150, it switches over. But at least I know that up to 120 FPS, you have autofocus. And then it crops and do a lot of things to make the highest frame rates. And then you will need to drop the autofocus.
So I've seen a lot of reviewers have been saying that in 4K 60 the autofocus is even better than normal. Do you think that feature could even be better in 120?
I'm not so sure about that because I haven't used it that much in autofocus. Well, it could be, and of course the reason for 4K 60 to be better than 4K 30 is of course because of the frame rate on the sensor. So when you go full frame, you cannot use 60 frames per second in the background. But even if you would crop it in Super 35 and go 30 FPS with that, it would still be possible to use 60 FPS to the focus system. So I'm not sure really if that really works that way. I haven't tried it, but it could be even better if you select Super 35 in 30 FPS, because it can possibly use the higher frame rate then. So the autofocus system is reliant on how much frames you can get from the sensor.
Cool. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to shooting with it. So when it comes to the lens that you're holding, this is a very unusual lens.
It is. It's a 2060 millimeter.
And it's not often I get excited about the
focal length.
About the kit lens.
That's right. And since I've been shooting with this now for some time, I think that this is, to me at least, it doesn't really feel like a kit lens. Even if it's not even a speedy lens. I mean, it's a 3.5 to 5.6.
It almost feels like the other S Pro lenses.
It does, in terms of image quality, and we looked at some images here before, and the bokeh and everything is like really nice with this lens. And the thing that I've been seeing with our other lenses, also on MFT, is that sometimes when we don't make them really super fast, they are optically excellent. Just because of that. So it is easier for us to make it really a super good lens. And what I think is most important with this lens is, of course, the portability, the lightweight, but also the focal length is so good for general photography, like documenting things. It's good for stills, it's good for video. It's also very good if you shoot in Super 35. It's going to be a very manageable, nice focal length and quite wide anyway. So 20 to 60, I think it's a great focal length that's quite new out there. Haven't seen it yet, so really nice.
And I know that a couple of weeks ago, Panasonic came out with a roadmap of quite a few lenses.
Right, yeah. So there are new lenses coming to this small camera in particular, but that's going to work on all of the lens, the Lumix S series, of course. But that's going to be a set of primes, and that's going to be 5 primes. We know the focal length of 4 of them, and that's going to be the 24, 35, 50, and 85 millimeter. And they're going to be all f1.8.
Yeah.
And I'm really happy to see this, because we need smaller lenses, obviously, because we've had quite some really hefty lenses that really make a statement, but we need something that's small and portable as well.
That has been the paradox of shooting full frame with small cameras like the Sony's. Right. Doesn't matter how small the camera is, your lenses will still be humongous if you're going for 2.8 zooms or f1.4 primes. So that's something that I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah, and I'm excited to see how they're going to turn out, because we have really good expertise in that area of making small and light lenses as well. So even if we didn't do that in the beginning, we might be really good at releasing this now. So so looking forward to that.
So we did talk a little bit about autofocus.
Right.
But let's talk a little bit more.
Yeah.
We all know that this is improved in some way.
Yes, it is essentially improved in the way that the camera now can process the information from the lens much faster. Okay. So what it means is that it's updating more instantaneously. Like if we looked at the other cameras, with the older firmwares, the S1 series, for instance, and the GH5, they were kind of polling every now and then. It was polling to see, kind of update its internal depth map. Okay. And this update seems to be coming instantaneously now. So it's like doing it all the time. One thing I noticed is that if you shoot video with it, you can, if you listen to the focus motor closely, you can hear that it's like updating all the time, but it doesn't really move much, but it's still like on the go, ready to do a change. And also it's doing less of the typical kind of hunting and sort of pulsing that we've seen. So it's a progress, and of course Panasonic has been on the ball with this for a long time, trying to really get there. And of course there are also a few things that is worth noting here, and that's why the reason to have DFD focusing and not face detection focus on the sensor itself. And that's because of the image quality that you get from a clean sensor that does not have any, so to speak, cloned picture pixels. Because there is a change, and you don't get any artifacts in any way with this sensor. So it's also, of course, a trade-off. Where do we want to be best? And nobody can be best at everything, really. So I'm happy to see that the improvements are really there. They are, the camera is producing a lot better autofocus. The biggest improvement, I think, is in stills, but there is an improvement in video as well. And how much, that's up to you guys to figure out, and we'll see. We
also know that the improvements in the autofocus will come to the other S1 series.
That's right.
cameras.
Yeah, so that's a really exciting update that's coming to the S series of cameras later this year. And also, speaking of firmware updates, it is announced that there will be an update to the Lumix S5 sometime later this year, and that update will bring RAW 5.9K to the Atomos Ninja 5 recorder, just like the S1H. And the question comes up, what is really different than with the S1H? Well, of course, there's so many other things like the fan cooling and stuff like that, but when you shoot RAW, I think the biggest difference is that this sensor has not the low-pass filter you have in the S1H. It's not a big difference, but it's going to make a little difference if you look at like Moire and stuff like that. In full resolution, that's where it really can make a difference. But that's a really cool feature to have, like 12-bit, 5.9K and 4K 60p RAW in this, and also anamorphic. That's something we forgot to say here, but maybe you will come to it.
I had it in my next list.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
So this camera has anamorphic modes, not just with the RAW update that comes later. It also has it on the internal recording. So what it means is that you can adapt a big range of anamorphic lenses to this. You can use big ones like the Cook lenses, 2.0 crop lenses or stretch, and you can de-squeeze the footage on the screen. You can also adapt the stabilizer to that lens. So if you have a 1.3 lens or 1.33, 1.5, etc., you can just select which kind of lens you have and it's going to work.
Okay.
So that is really unique. We have it in the S1H and we have this in the GH5 as well.
I know that a lot of people, because I've heard this before from a lot of people, well, I don't shoot anamorphic, but we also know that anamorphic lenses are getting cheaper and cheaper all the time.
Right.
Siri has two.
Yeah, a really cheap line of two lenses now, the 35 and 50
Magic has them. Vazen
Yes.
has made one that's a little bit more expensive, but still
Right.
they are getting cheaper and cheaper. So
They are going there, and I think that's the trend, and I think this just, that is really relying on cameras that can shoot this easily.
Yeah.
Because before this revolution of anamorphic lenses in low price, it was just the bigger cameras that could do it. So that's exciting to see. I love anamorphic lenses, so for me it's really fantastic.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Martin. I'm really looking forward to shooting with this, and I'm really pumped to see finally a full frame Panasonic GH5 arrived.
Yeah.
So thank you so much.
Thanks,
and guys, if you have any questions for us, feel free to leave them in the comments, and we'll try to get back to Martin maybe another time. We've talked about maybe having a session live online.
That'd be nice. Absolutely.
And so if you have any questions for me or Martin from Panasonic or anything else, feel free to leave them in the comments. Thank you so much for coming to Malmo.
Thanks a lot for taking me.
Hope to see you soon.